Welcome everyone to another acrylic paint along afternoon. I'm so glad you can make it and join me for this. Today we're going to do a painting on fall scenery. I love painting fall scenery. It's a great thing to do. It's a great time of year to be painting. Today, this is our test today. I'm going to show you, this is the, oh, here we are. So this is a copy, this scene comes from my cousin actually snapped this shot while he was in Mont Tremblant not too long ago. He always manages to catch such great pictures. So this is I'll give you a full, this was the inspiration for today's scene. Something from Mont Tremblant. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. For today's equipment, I have a cup of water, just some brushes here. I have my canvas, my palette, which yes, it is an old cutting board, and my paints, which are mostly just little tubes that came with the this beginner paint set I bought for these when I started. I have some, I used up the yellow in the beginner paint set, so I have some cadmium yellow that I think might be 10 years old now. Paint keeps a long time. And then I had to go buy some new white because I was running out of that as well. And I always run through a quick thing about cleanup. We do try to avoid having the paints go into our water system as much as possible. So at the end, if you could just wet this down, wipe this off with a damp paper towel and give it a scrub first, throw that in the garbage, and then you can wash the rest off in the sink. But we try to put any gobs of paint or anything that's, that we can easily scrape off, we can throw in the garbage, and it will be looked after properly in the landfill, let's say. All right, and if you're joining us, we have a couple of people already saying hello. Nice to see you. Renette and, Aswathi. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't butcher your name. But thank you guys so much for joining us. And yes, if anyone has any comments or questions, you can put them up on the screen, and I will do my best to answer them. All right, so getting started. I have to adjust one camera here. There we go. I just realized it's not going to do you much good if you're seeing the painting from the side as I'm doing it. So here we go. Get to my other camera. There we are. So now you have a bird's eye view of my work area here. There we go. I'll set up my painting here, my palette here, and I've got my brushes and paper towel there, and all my paints. Hi Jan, welcome. All right. So here we go. I'm also going to set up my put it on my camera. I'm not using, or my computer. I'm not using that part. Okay. One other thing I usually mention is just cleaning your brushes. When I'm doing a painting, I sort of just dibble my brush in my water and then dab it on the paper towel, and it can usually sit like that wet until I'm ready to use it again. And then at the end, I give it a good proper washing under the sink. This, if you leave your brushes upside down like this in water for a long time, you're going to get bent brushes, and we try to keep them working as long as we can. So we're going to begin with a sketch. I'm just going to pick, I think I'll pick burnt sienna for the sort of a reddish brown color that goes well with fall. It's also going to contrast somewhat with the blues I'm going to be using in the sky and the water. And contrast is what makes colors pop, so I'll use that. And so I did dip my brush in water, get it just a little bit wet, to sort of just thin the paint enough. Too much and, well, I mean, this is our sketch, so it doesn't matter, but a little bit of water on your paintbrush is okay. Too much, then you're going to end up with a transparent painting. So here I'm just sort of tracing out the outline of the mountain. As I said, Mont Tremblant. There we go. And then we have a line, maybe just a little higher actually. Not quite midline, but not too far below that either. And do my best to make that as straight as possible. If it's not perfect, we're going to go over it later, so not a big deal. And then we can just do some sketching of some of the trees that are going here. So we've got some spruce trees. Going in here. And one kind of over here that's a little bit wider. And one over here that's kind of bushier. And I mean, chances are we won't see any of these by the end of it, but I still like it to orient me to the painting a little bit. Now, we do have this little rise. And this one here, I'm not going to do those yet. I will add those in as I go. All right. So next we're going to do the sky. And for that, I'm going to take my titanium white, cobalt blue, and my cadmium yellow. And I will probably end up using just a little bit of the burnt sienna. I'm going to prepare some raw umber on the side as well. And if you have a darker brown color, you might want to do that, just because we're going to be mixing a darker color and maybe a bit of my crimson too. So The cobalt's a nice color that goes to the sky just by itself. Here around the edges, we're going to have paler cobalt, so mixed with lots of white. Any blue you have is all right. You can use that. The best blue for skies like this is actually cyan, pure primary cyan. So in painting, the primary colors are cyan, magenta, and primary yellow. I know they don't teach that in school often, so it was a surprise to me several years ago when I realized that. But at this point, cobalt blue is a good option. Any blue you have, if you add enough white into it, should give you the pale sky. Then I've got more of the full color cobalt mixed in with a little bit of crimson, a little bit of brown, sort of just to give it that dark cloud hue. And the clouds themselves are actually white and yellow mixed very closely together, with little touches of pink. So that's what we will be working towards. So the colors, just again for the sky, I have cadmium yellow hue, cobalt blue, and titanium white. And just sitting on the side, I have still the burnt sienna, a darker brown, which is raw umber in this case, and this is a crimson. Your closest proximity of these will work. It'll look a little different, but it won't, I don't think it will ruin the painting in any case. So getting my paints out. You're going to need quite a bit of the white. And a good amount also of the cobalt. Ooh, I might almost be out of that one. That might make the water kind of tricky. We'll see. And then I'm going to put the yellow down here because it's probably going to end up getting used mostly for the leaves. So you can add a good amount of yellow onto your palette if you like. We won't use it all at this time, but it will be used eventually. So I'm going to select, I don't like how long that one is. I'm going to select my round brush for this. Get it wet, dry it off. I do this more for the shape of the brush so it stays sort of pointy while I'm adding paint to it. And I'm just going to start by painting in clouds. And clouds have a more regular pattern than you might think. So I'll sit down. I'll start with this top cloud. I'm just going to go along the edge here and put some white down, just like that. Then I'm going to do this cloud over here. Again, just sort of putting the white down. And I know you can't see it, so, but I'm laying it on fairly thick. And just sort of the approximate shape of where I think the clouds are going to be. So this one trails off, and then there's a white spot, kind of dances back and forth there as the cloud breaks up. A little bit down here, and maybe just a line or two up here. Okay, and then the last cloud is this one at the bottom that's kind of sliding in behind the mountain. Okay, and that will give me an idea of about how I've spaced the clouds on my painting, and you know, if I wanted to make any changes now, I definitely could. So I've got some yellow here that I've added to my brush, and I'm working it until it's very, very pale yellow. And then I'm just weaving it in, mixing wet on wet, this light yellow into anywhere I put the white. There we go. And if you find you've gone too far or you just want to loosen it up in some places, throw some white back over top of the yellow. I'm going to put that brush down for just a second. Clouds are actually many, many colors together. So I'm going to take another bit of white and just the tiniest dot of the crimson red I've got here. And even that's a little too strong. And then just mix it in here and there, little dots, curls. And then again, take the white and sort of mix it and blend it. And that just sort of adds visual interest, right? The variation in there. So now we're going to move right into doing the dark colors. The dark of the clouds here. So I'm going to, I may regret moving that so far over later, but that's okay. And I'm just going to add, actually, I'm going to try and see how a little bit of this burnt sienna mixes in. If that sort of gives me the color I want. Not purple enough, really. Add a little bit of the crimson. I want it to be just a little bit purpley. We've got this lovely, slightly yellow tint. And now we can contrast it against a purpley blue. So again, just finding your little white areas, and it's okay if you go straight over top of some of the white, and it's okay if it mixes in. That's going to make things interesting too. Actually, I may go back over it and force some mixing a little bit later. And again, just going underneath any spot where I put a cloud earlier. And then there's also like a spot right up in this corner that's kind of black. So I'm just gonna let that trail off there. Okay, and I think I'm going to add in a little bit more blue, just for, again, some color variation. I'm going to rinse that. See if I can't take my white and just sort of, didn't dry my brush off well enough. No, there you go. Got a drop of water on here. There you go. If you find you're not getting the wet on wet mixing technique, there's several reasons why it could be. Sometimes it's just, you know, the amount of humidity in the air where you are. Other times it can be your paint, the type of paint you use. There's a particularly lovely type of paint by Golden called Golden Open that is a slow drying acrylic. And that's great for these kinds of paintings where you want sort of mixed colors on the canvas, not always on the mixing board. Mix some of that up there. Yeah. All right. And the last step is to take some white and some of the blue and mix it together to make the sky color. So start with one color and now some people would say, you know, we should have started maybe with the background, with the blue, and then gone over to putting the clouds on top of it, and you can certainly do that. The challenge with that, however, is that you need to wait for things to dry before you can paint the cloud layer on, because you'll get things mixing in. So here I'm just slowly adding in a little bit of white and going down towards the horizon. So finish sort of a line across, add a little bit more white, and do sort of the next line. And of course, by the time we get down here, we're pretty much dealing with a white horizon anyway. All right. So there's my sky. And it looks different from this one, because of course every sky is different. Okay. Now, since they're fairly separate, I'm going to suggest, and it uses the same color, I'm going to go down and do the water. So the water is not quite a pure cobalt, I see. Slightly. Of course, it's reflecting the sky, so it's going to be sort of similar colors as the sky, but not quite the same. Try not to get the desk. Using some of my dark sky color on the edges here. And now I'm going to need to add more blue because I think I'm running out of paint. But I'm using my flat brush. It's skinny one way and long the other. And I use the fat side to lay down the pigment, or lay down the paint, I should say. Mix it with the white. So I'm using the fat side to lay down the paint. And you'll see that the colors aren't totally mixed when I add them to the canvas, and that's okay. They can mix on the canvas as I go over them. Or sometimes it's nice to have them not mix at all. And yes, I'm going right over my sketch. Some of it will survive, but not all of it. So now that I've laid down my pigments, or my paint, I'm actually going to take the narrow side of my brush, the skinny side, and I've got a little bit of white on there, and I'm going to go back and forth like this. If that doesn't quite do it, you can also try taking the butt of your paintbrush and doing what's called sgraffiti. Which is just and so we're scraping away paint with sort of the butt of the brush and getting these very thin lines that would sort of get longer as you get closer to you and stay small and tiny in the background, actually. And really the color of the water is quite uniform. It seems like it's just choppy enough to keep things from showing a reflection, but also a little bit more white. But also far enough away that we don't see all the details of the water. So there we go. Oh dear. Does your computer want to reboot? No, do not reboot my computer. Pesky updates. All right. So there's my water, there's my sky. Now we can move on to doing the colors. And, you know, nothing is ever wasted. I'm just going to envelop all these three colors into one kind of a block. So that was burnt umber, burnt sienna, or sorry, raw umber, burnt sienna, and a crimson. And I'm going to add just a touch of Hooker's green, which is going to should take this red and make it darker. what? It's not quite going to get dark enough. That's okay. Usually I like mixing my blacks from a variety of different colors, but sometimes you just have to add black. There we go. So I've got this nice dark brown color. I need more of it, I think. We're going to need a good amount. So I'm going to add a little bit more dark brown, raw umber. A little bit more green. A little bit more black. Be careful with black. I don't use it often enough, so sometimes it gets too powerful. I forget how strong it is. And a little bit more. Let's see if I can't scrape up some of that blue. Give it a slightly cooler tone. So making dark colors is sort of, sometimes it's fun to use up whatever happens to be on your palette, just to get more variety, more depth to the color. All right. So the darkest parts of this are going to be up along the edge here. So I'm going to paint them in following my sketch. And if you want to, overrun your sketch so that it's hidden, that is absolutely fine with me. Sometimes I prefer to have it peeking out, but this time I think I want to have less of it peeking out. I want this sharp contrast with the sky. And we have a good amount. And then I'm going to just do the top of this hill here. But really it starts off fat over here and then gets less and less as we go down. So I'll try to give myself space. Now I'm going to add my crimson. And just mix it in up here. And I think I'm going to do that again, but with a new brush. This one's pretty saturated with the brown, so. Yeah. Not quite clean yet. There we go. I'm going to put that aside for a minute so I can access my brushes. I'll do another flat brush. I'm going to take the crimson and go sort of along the edge around here. And there's some more reddish around here. And slowly sort of building in the mounds of the mountain here. That are areas covered in shadow and transitioning into light. Gonna add in a little bit of yellow, so I got a bit more of an orange color, and then just continue moving slowly down with that color, so there's a bit of a gradient, a bit of flow. Maybe one more time. Just get yellow and let the residual on the brush kind of color that. Working to blend that in. Going around the edge of that bump there. So you can see as we slowly sort of gradient towards a lighter color. And some parts I've left with a stark contrast. And that's fine too. So we're going to need those colors again, but at the moment I'm going to wash my brush. And just go right into the pure yellow. And taking note of, there's a sort of a mound here that's got a strong contrast line. Applying lots and lots of paint there. Keep it opaque. And then just spreading the rest around. Leaving just a bit of space by the shoreline. We'll go over that a little bit later. And again, carefully cutting around this feature here. Filling in some the yellow underneath here. And there we've got the settings of what will be. The mountain. Now, of course, it's not completely a solid color. So I'm going to do a small round brush, because we're going to work on trees. So at first I'm just going to wet my brush a little bit. I'm going to try to work the paint with the wet brush in sort of a tree-y stroke, 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 dot, dot, dab, dab kind of pattern. And all that's going to do is just, with the wet brush, you're going to get some variation in the texture that is tree-like. bit over here as well. And then feel free to select any color sort of on your palette there. And maybe add a little bit more water, make it a thin color, and then just pick somewhere to start dabbing that on. Start at the edges and then work your way in if you. And that way, if you happen to choose a color that seems too strong, you can just leave it at the edges and cover it up with something else a little later. Now, there are sort of some landforms on here, and I'm watering down the black so that it won't be so strong. But there's sort of a line here and a line here that I'll apply in wet paint, or a mixture of paint and water, and then again just soften using sort of dot dash or dab 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 kind of pattern. What a very, very light orange color to sort of make some waves around there. And then, of course, we've got the shoreline, which is actually goes almost right back to the dark again. I'm gonna and there's some green in there too, so I'm gonna add a dot of this hooker's green to the palette there. So just doing a line of dark and, you know, mix in. There, that was my spot. Mix in some variety of colors. You can add red, you can add a little bit of green. And again, blending as much as you like, light and dark. Blending in colors. Ooh. Trying not to get the paint in the wrong spot. If you do, just a light brush of a wet cloth over top is going to fix that right up. I'm just going to make a strong line along the bottom here for the shoreline. Make it a little damp, just to help it flow a little bit more smoothly. And again, you can always take a sort of a wet brush and just see what dabbing that in some places is going to do. I think I want just a bit more greenish yellow in this area here. And maybe some more green tones over here. And there is some red. Yeah, too much red on my brush. There is some red on the front too. Mix that in. Some orange. There we go. And there's little chalets on this hill as well. And I think my white has dried up enough that I'll need to just add a little dab more white. They're not very big in the grand scheme of things. So a little bit of white there. You're gonna need to mix it with a touch of darker color. There we go. And there's a little chalet right here. And really it's just gonna appear like a white streak. There's one over here. Kind of a white square over here. And more shadowed ones in the shadow over here. I don't know why they're all white. That seems a funny color for me, but whatever. I don't design chalets. I'm sure there's a reason for it. And so now I'm just adding some dark to my brush. You know, the buildings have windows in them. I'm just adding in windows and roofs, kind of, which are just really odd shapes. Dots and dashes. And now we have all the colors left on our palette. to do our foreground here. So I'm going to start with, and this is why I wish I had my handy little spray bottle, because some of this paint is drying up. And if I had a spray bottle, I would put a little spray over it, and it would be quite useful for a while now. So working on these 2 spruce trees that are by the water here. I've mixed my brush with black and some green, or not black, but the leftover dark brown and green. And just starting at the top and drawing some branches. Again, I'm using my small round brush. And there's another sort of a fat one over here. And over here too. And just cleaning off some of that green because we've got tree limbs. Which are going to be a full strong black. And trees are usually just draw the same shape over and over again. I usually do a Y. And I'm happy with that for now. Go back to my bigger brush, grab some yellow, and what's left of the red. And any colors we want to have on this side, we want to have, or on this side of the shore, I mean, we want to have muted slightly. So getting them dirty with a little bit of, say, dark brown green, that's fine. That way the front shore, which is actually in shadow, doesn't kind of overpower the bright center of the painting. We sort of want the eye drawn to the middle here as opposed to all the corners. So just pop it on there with some orange. I think I may need to get some red out again. There we go. So just fuzzy batches of leaves here and there. And at this point now I'm down to sort of the random stage. There's a little bit of color sort of randomly going everywhere. It's all right, it's just filler. Some shadow. That I may need to just go over again with some wet to dampen it down. See if I've got any more yellow in here that is still usable. Yeah, maybe that wasn't the best idea. What I did was apply paint that was too thin over the blue, and that would have, well, I want strong colors, not thin glazes. All right. And there we are. So we've got the contrast of, better not leave my brush in there. This beautiful contrast of sort of the purple in the clouds and the blue in the sky and the water against this vibrant yellow color with lots of variations of orange, red, dark, light. A perfect fall scene. There you go. How did yours turn out? If it wasn't exactly like you wanted, then always feel free to try again. That's one of the reasons why I do these on YouTube. Because we can save them and you can go back and do it as many times as you like. So our next session, I think, is the 1st of December. And we'll be working on pet portraits. So if you have a pet or know somebody who has a pet and you think they'd like a gift of a pet portrait, then see if you can get a picture of that pet, and I'll sort of go through the steps of making your own portrait for your own pet. I'll have one and you can either follow along and create the same portrait as me, or you can have your own. So as for me, I'm going to try to scrape off any paint on this palette and go finish cleaning up. Thank you for joining me. I hope you guys had a good time, and we'll see you next time. Bye.